Hello, and welcome to Strange Detectives, a YouTube channel dedicated to... It's not a christening, all right. Hello, and welcome to Strange Detectives, a YouTube channel devoted to... I feel like I'm having a manic breakdown. Hello, and welcome to Strange Detectives, a YouTube channel about strange and unusual detective fiction. All right, so I'm making a YouTube channel about books. I'm making a BookTube. I have the obligatory bookcases, check. I have coffee, ooh, check. I'm hoping that this channel will be like a message in a bottle, I guess. I have an obsession with a very particular literary niche, and I'm just hoping to find other people that feel the same way about strange detective fiction as I do.
Wait a minute! Who are you?
Right, who am I? Well, my name is Xavier, and I thought maybe we could do a quick speed run just so you could get to know me a little bit better.
Strange Detective Speedrun beginning in 3, 2, 1. What book have you reread the most?
Oh, easy. Middlemarch.
Bookmarks or dog ears?
Bookmarks or dog ears? It's so much worse than that. I frequently leave books, spine side up to the open page so that it, destroys the spine. I am terrible with my books and not proud of it. Oof, terrible. Terrible.
What is the last book you finished that you enjoyed?
Let's see. I recently finished Redshift by Alan Garner, which I enjoyed quite a bit. It reminds me of something that a more melancholic Tom Stoppard might have written. It has, dual timelines. Well, that's not right. It actually has 3 timelines. Also, it got me thinking. I might be misremembering this from college, but I thought I was taught that Peter Ackroyd's Hawksmoor? See, now I'm misremembering a lot. In any case, I had thought that Peter Ackroyd had somehow invented or innovated the kind of alternating timeline, alternating chapter technique, which is very popular these days, obviously. But Redshift was published like a full 8 years earlier, which raises the question, who is the innovator of the alternating chapter, alternating timeline technique? I tried Googling this, but I just kept getting recommendations for Outlander. So if you have any idea, I'd love to track this down. Right now, the earliest I can find is Redshift, which was published in 1973 or 1975, I think. But there has to be earlier examples, right? I don't know. Let me know.
Favorite Shakespeare?
Richard II or Henry IV, Part 1?
Favorite Jane Austen?
Okay, so it's not her most well-crafted novel, and it's, maybe not technically her best novel, but I have such a soft spot in my heart for Northanger Abbey. I'm going to say Northanger Abbey.
Favorite Pynchon?
Mason and Dixon.
Who is your favorite Japanese crime writer?
Keigo Higashino. I love the Detective Galileo series.
What is the most recent international literature you've enjoyed?
Let's see. I recently got back from a trip to Zimbabwe, actually. That's where my sister-in-law's family is from. And I read House of Stone by Nobuyo Tsushima and The Grass is Singing by Doris Lessing, kind of like as preparation, I guess. And both were phenomenal. But House of Stone blew me away. It's really stuck with me. It's a particularly brutal read in the sense that there's lots of violence, but the language is dazzling is a cliche probably, but it really is just this exhilarating, breathtaking achievement. And I'm like still scratching my head as to how it all fits together. Yeah, there's not really anything I can think that's quite like it. I highly recommend checking it out.
Who is your favorite poet?
Charles Olson or Derek Walcott?
What is the great American novel?
I don't know. Blood Meridian. Or Mumbo Jumbo. I don't know.
Who is your favorite author no one has ever heard of?
My favorite author that you've never heard of is Odell Shepherd, the poet laureate of Connecticut. No, but seriously, if there are any Shep heads out there, I need you to contact me immediately. If you've read Long Stalking Tales or Jenkins' Ear, please get in touch with me ASAP. We have a lot to talk about.
What is your most controversial book opinion?
I'll be honest, I give up on like 90% of novels written in a first-person POV. There's just something impossibly artificial about them most of the time. So unless it's like a stream of consciousness or, a real masterpiece like Moby Dick, I'm out.
Strange Detective speedrun completed.
So that's a little bit about me, pretty generic, that dude from your MFA class type stuff. But don't worry, none of my admittedly middlebrow literary tastes will have any bearing on this channel, I hope. Because here at Strange Detectives, I want to do one thing and one thing only, and that is focus on strange or unusual detective fiction. There's lots of labels for the types of books that I want to talk about on this channel. Postmodern detective fiction is probably too narrow for what I'm after, but you'll sometimes see this genre referred to as metaphysical detective fiction or analytic or ontological detective fiction. But I just kind of want to lump them all together as strange detective fiction. There is nothing that brings me quite so much pleasure as a well-executed strange detective novel. It's like being in middle school when you're learning to use like a combination lock for the first time, and you're fiddling with it and fiddling with it and fiddling with it, and then finally, pop. That little pop you get, that little like that's the same pleasure I get from a good detective novel. How's the pop filter? Do I need a pop filter? I don't know. I guess we'll find out together. I think a lot of the satisfaction that I get reading detective fiction arises from the fact that detective fiction is pretty unique. Pretty unique is not a thing. So I think a lot of the satisfaction comes from the fact that detective fiction as a genre is structurally unique. I believe, and feel free to challenge me, that detective novels are unique in that they are formally rather rigid. Maybe the genre of romance comes close, I'm not sure. When we say that a novel is a science fiction or a Western, we're really talking about something like its setting. And likewise, when we say that a novel is a thriller or a horror, we're really talking about its tone, right? So a thriller is written with a tone of suspense, say, and horror is written with a tone of suspense plus revulsion or disgust. But simply learning that a novel is a science fiction or a Western or a horror, we don't learn anything about its narrative. But that's not true with detective fiction. When we learn that a novel is a detective fiction, we can actually make some guesses as to what the narrative structure might look like. And we can do that because detective fiction is obsessed with rules and rule sets. There's lots of rule sets. But the number one rule that they all have in common is that in order for a piece of fiction to be detective fiction,
there needs to be a detective.
And the detective is a fascinating character in fiction. Oftentimes the detective is something like a reader surrogate, which is true of lots of fiction, but the relationship between the reader and the detective is different somehow in a way that I think is interesting. And when you're reading detective fiction, there's a very real sense in which you're competing with the detective somehow, or at the very least, you're engaged in the same type of work or on the same project. You're both trying to produce a narrative. And it's this narrative doubling, this tiny sliver of meta-ness or self-reflection or strangeness or whatever you want to call it. And that's it, that's enough. Suddenly we're off to the races because all sorts of questions present themselves. Questions of epistemology, like what is the truth? More importantly, how can we learn the truth? Can the truth even be known? There's questions of semiotics, like what is a clue? What does it mean for something to be a clue? What does it mean for something to stand in for something else? What does it mean to read a room for clues? Or to investigate a city? What does that mean? You know, oftentimes our detective will be plunged into some labyrinthine urban environment and they'll be tasked with uncovering the city's secrets. But what does that mean? You know, uncovering secrets, it's like a hermeneutic project, isn't it? In that sense, the detective is something like an alchemist. You know, but it's not just hermeneutics. I mean, basically every school of literary theory or critical theory has taken a shot at trying to understand detective fiction at some point or another. So the Frankfurt School made a go of this, the reader response theorists took a crack at this, and the Lacanians are obsessed with detective fiction, particularly Edgar Allan Poe. Derridans have a reading on this, and...
One eternity later.
All right, before I go off the deep end, I don't want this to be an abstract meditation on the state of 20th century literary theory. So let me just give some examples of the kinds of books that I really want to talk about on this channel. You know, something like Paul Auster's The New York trilogy is like the paradigmatic example of strange detective fiction, which is great. I love Paul Auster. You know, I want to talk about Mysteries of Winterthurn by Joyce Carol Oates. I want to talk about the Lord Darcy series, or Falling Angel. But there's all sorts of strange detective novels that I really, really want to talk about. You know, I want to talk about Dreaming of Babylon. And then there's just so much pulp I want to talk about too. I promise you, lots and lots of pulp. You know, it occurs to me that I've collected or read hundreds of these stories in my life, and I've really only ever talked about them with like 2 or 3 other people. And this just seems needless in this age of social media. And so I've decided to create this YouTube channel. There probably won't be very many book hauls or top 10 lists. And most of the books that I want to talk about are out of print, which is unfortunate. So I can't imagine that I'm going to crush the subscriber count anytime soon. But honestly, if there's like a half dozen people out there that are as passionate about But honestly, if there's like a half dozen people out there that are as passionate about this type of thing as I am, I'd love to hear from you. So you don't have to like, you don't have to subscribe, but please leave a comment. In any case, I'm Xavier, this is Strange Detectives, and hopefully I'll see you soon.